I love the Tongan people. They're so easy to love because they love you right back, and they show it. They usually show it first. You couldn't walk down the street in Seaside without being honked at by a friendly Tongan. They'd always wave to you, even if they weren't members of the church. There are many times where I'd just be walking the street with my companion and trying to talk to people, and you'd see some Tongans walk up and they just hand you money, and you're like, oh no, we can't accept money, and they give it to you and they run away because they're just so nice. They'll do whatever they can to help the missionaries, and again, even if they're not even part of the church, they recognize that we're there to help people come closer to Christ, and they respect that. A funny thing about them also that sometimes they would always forget that they signed up to feed us for a dinner. We have a calendar that would go around, and we'd call them the night before, and we'd say, hey, we have you down for a dinner appointment tomorrow. Is that okay? Can you still feed us? And they're like, yeah, come over at 6. And so we'd go over at 6, and we'd go knock on their door, and they'd open the door. Oh, elders, hometown buffet. So we'd eat at the buffet 2 or 3 times a week. When they signed up to feed us, and again, they would do anything for us. Something else I noticed that it kind of made me uncomfortable, but I mean, it's the culture. Whenever they invite us over to eat at their house, a lot of times they'd give us all the food that they prepared for us, and then they'd go sit on the couch, or they'd kind of sit next to us, but they wouldn't eat while we were there because it was all about the missionaries and having them in their home and being able to fill the spirit with our message or whatever it was. But they're always very, very respectful to the Spirit Church and the missionaries. They'd give us the food, and they'd sit down. Oh, we'll eat later, they'd say, and we'd just eat. And sometimes I felt bad. We'd eat in front of them, and they'd just eat whatever we left. Or they'd give us all the leftovers, which was usually enough to feed us for the rest of the month. They always fed us so much. Tongans are very good singers. They can all harmonize together, and they usually don't need a book. For sacrament meeting, the chorister will get up. They'll have a song picked out. He'll just start singing it, and he'll get about 3 or 4 words in, and then the entire congregation will join him, and it's just beautiful. It always has a perfect pitch, and you just fall in love with their voices instantly. It's a very spiritual moment.
I think one of the biggest thing I could take from it going on my mission there is respect. They really value somebody who has respect for everyone else. They really, the culture out there is really, how would you say, family is very important to them. And the way you treat family members are even more important. They have a respect that between brothers and sisters is a real line of respect, that you don't disrespect the sisters and the sisters don't disrespect the brothers. That's a big thing out there, and when they see that you're someone who does that you know how to treat the opposite gender, it's really held high out there. They also love to joke a lot. Tongans will find anything to joke about, but they're really loving people. They're friendly. The culture out there is way different from what it is out here in America or anywhere else. I believe it's just it'd be rude not to say anything to somebody who's walking by you, even if you're not acquainted with them at all. It's always nice to say hello, good morning, or it's weird. One of the ways you can greet somebody in the morning as they're walking by is, "Where are you going?" And it sounds weird in English. It's when you're brought up in English, that's weird to say, but in Tongan it's perfectly fine, and they'll just tell you, "I'm going this way." And they'll keep walking on their day, but they really appreciate that somebody acknowledges that they exist. I think at a small island, everybody will say hi to somebody, and so that's one of the many things that the culture has to offer. Another thing in regards to missionaries, and even just any man of God or somebody who's serving in a religious position, they're held with the high respect. The people of Tonga, even if they're in a different denomination, when they see missionaries on the street, they treated it as if that was their own priest. As far as it goes with being welcoming and actually feeding the missionaries, you can. Missionaries will never starve in Tonga. That's the honest truth. It's really impossible for missionaries to starve in Tonga. You walk in the street, and let's just say there's a couple of guys eating on the side of the road. They'll actually stop you and say, like, "Hey, come and eat." And it'd be rude to walk by a group like that, and they wouldn't say nothing to at least offer the invite. And so, yeah, it's always about sharing. That's another big thing in Tonga. You don't see too much progression because everybody loves to share. It doesn't matter how much they have, it's what they could actually give to someone else. They do the same main traditions, like Christmas. They celebrate Christmas. They also have a lot of the religious holidays that they have for different denominations. They have what they call like a white May. It's a program where everybody dresses up in all white, especially the kids, and they have their how we have our primary programs. They have their programs where they read lessons and everything. That's a big thing. Mother's Day is a big thing out there. When it comes to they do have Christmas, but they do have certain ways they do their Christmas. It's not so much as what presents you have, but actually putting a big feast together and taking it over to other families' houses. And that's the way they celebrate their Christmases, is that they make a whole bunch of dishes of different kinds of foods that they want to make, and they'll take it over to their neighbor's house. And the neighbors will do the same exact thing, the other neighbors and neighbors will do so. And so it really is, it goes back to sharing, but that's their tradition. One of the big culture thing is the brothers always respect the sisters. They always have something to give to the sisters. That's one of the big things they have, is that you see a lot of brothers, they take care of their own family, but they also always show respect to their sisters' families. And that once their sister's married, they usually get a big, we would say like a big box or a whole bunch of taro and a whole bunch of other things. They'd actually just take it over to her house Christmas Eve and just take a whole bunch of food for them to cook and have for their families. But yeah, they talk about, they have a tradition where they talk about the, I don't know, it's not like matriarch or anything, but it's, we have a thing, it's called fahu. And fahus are pretty much, the sisters are held higher than the brothers at certain points. The sisters are always held higher. But we would say, like, if you have a wedding, a representative from the father's side, which would be the fahu, would be one of the honorable guests there, especially. So yeah, but at some point, somebody's somebody's sister, and so it usually goes around, and when done correctly, everybody gets a piece of the pie. You know, I'm married to somebody who's, you know, held respectably high by their brothers, but I also have my sisters that I appreciate as well. No, that actually they do have an attire, you know, just like I'm wearing right now. I had my tavala on, but this is what someone serving a mission will wear in Tonga. You have your white shirt, your tie, but you have your tavala, you have your kafa, which is almost like a belt, and then you have your tupenu, and this is like the man skirt. But yeah, that's pretty much. You have certain occasions that you wear certain things to. This is what a missionary would wear. To church, you would also be required to wear this. You can also wear pants if you want, But another thing is like if you're going to court, or if you're going to visit the king, or even attempt to visit the king, you won't be let past the gate unless you actually have the proper attire, which requires you to wear a tavala and a tupanu and a dress shirt. There's also special occasions where, such as a funeral, you actually could tell what part of the family is who because of what they're wearing. There's different kind of tavalas, or and what they call is just mats that they wear. Or if you're a certain part of the family, such as I think it's the brothers, but you can tell that they're the brother of the person who's deceased. It's the brother side of the family, because they wear mats or different. They're dirty mats. They're old, and they're actually really big and cover the head of the person who's wearing it. And usually the whole family is wearing it. If it's the brother's family, they'll wear it to show that they were lower than the person and that they're in mourning. You also don't bring nice, clean clothes to the funerals. It's actually disrespectful to come into a funeral with a clean tavala, because the family is mourning, and that's not the type of clothes that they would wear to a funeral. They have things called ngatus, and there's certain villages that you'll go by, and you can tell what they're actually into. And usually there's a place. It's like it's called Hakame or Homa, and this is mostly part of Tonga, the main island. You can hear in the morning that you can hear like a big like clunk 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 clunk, and it's like a piece of wood being smacked against the whole time, and that's all you hear is just clunk 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 clunk. But if you were to go into houses, you would see that these women were getting a certain bark off of a tree. They'd strip the trees off with the bark, but the bark would stay in one whole contact. That they would put it on the piece of wood and break it apart. And when they break it apart, they would flip it over, break it apart again, but they would actually add more of those tree barks together, and they actually come up with the material. It's like a paper-like material, but it's really thick and strong. And that they put it together and they dry it out, and then they wet it again, and they clunk, 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 put it out. But once that product is done, they actually have a part where it's called like the kokaanga, and it's like they use a special ink that they hand paint all these mats or ngatus. And these are actually like what they call like the koloa Tonga. So they have the different kind of treasures from Tonga. So that's one of them, is that they do the hand painted mats, but they also do a lot of the weaving. And so I've seen the process of how they weave, and they collect different kind of plants that they're like long pieces of leaves, and they twist them up and they'll dry them out, and they'll be brown, and then they'll slice them out into thin little pieces. They'll slice them out, and then they'll weave them little by little, but then they'll come out with mats that are like 100 feet by 100 feet. Yeah, so they do a lot of work, but a lot of their livelihood depends on that. A lot of people would buy certain Tongan treasures or koloa to survive. But these mats and ngatus and different things that they use are also used as like dowry for gifts for families, or even for birthdays, or even just certain occasions. But even at funerals, so like Johnny Lingo had the 8 cows. We actually would provide just these mats instead of livestock. But yeah, that's pretty much their thing. It actually varies from what island you're from, that there's a special art that they do in different places. So Tonga is known to do a lot of the clunk 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 and getting this whole thing and painting it out and everything. And there's different areas that actually do the woven mats. And so you have other places that will do mats, but in a different way. They will like they would boil the leaves. They wrap the leaves around and boil it in a big old pot and have a whole bunch of these leaves boiling. After they boil it, they throw it out into the ocean. And when they throw it out into the ocean, it becomes like nice and really like white, a clean color. Like the color leaves it. It's not green anymore. It's not brown, but it's a clean white. And when they wove in that mat, it has its own special value compared to the other mats in Tonga. So each area in Tonga has their own specialty, but a lot of the women do most of that work, but the men really just stay in the farms and or go out into the ocean and either do fishing or farming.